Top of the morning. It is July the 9th, and I am here with your geopolitical news. Al Jazeera reports, why did Israel deploy Hannibal directive, allowing killing of own citizens? A new report says Israel launched the directive, allowing for killing of captives taken by Hamas on October 7th from the very start of the war on Gaza. Now, I've posted about this on the X platform, about this directive called the Hannibal Directive. And I'm going to go over to that post so I can read exactly what the Hannibal Directive means. Okay, so right now I'm on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter. And today is July 9th, and I've just read to you um, that post previously about Israel enacting the Hannibal Directive. Now, I made this post on June 25th of this year because I became privy to this very same directive at this time. So now I'm going to read to you exactly what it says. The Hannibal Procedure or Hannibal Protocol is the name of a controversial procedure that was used by Israel Defense Forces, IDF, until 2016 to prevent the capture of Israeli soldiers by enemy forces. According to one version, it says that the kidnapping must be stopped by all means, even at the price of striking and harming our own forces. It was introduced in 1986 after a number of abductions of IDF soldiers in Lebanon and subsequent controversial prisoner exchanges. The full text of the directive was never published. And until 2003, Israeli military censorship forbade any discussion of the subject in the press. The directive has been changed several times until it was officially revoked in 2016 by IDF Chief of Staff. The directive's replacement has not been published. Now, I put very interesting at the bottom of that. So now, going back to the previous post, the previous segment of what I've just read to you about them now enacting the Hannibal Directive. Well, it said that the directive it hadn't been replaced up until that, it hadn't been published or replaced up until this point. So now I see that it has. But you can see clearly from what this says what the Hannibal Directive means. It says it clearly. Rather than you to be captured by the enemy, by enemy forces, they will kill you. If they assume that you are to be captured by enemy forces, then this directive gives them all the right to kill you, to assassinate you, to murder you, your very own people. So this is a directive that the Israeli government has passed for any and every individual who is involved in the Israeli military. And I believe that it stretches further than that, but that's just my belief. I believe that it stretches to any Israeli individual, any Israeli citizen or individual who's in the military. Because any individual that's captured by any enemy, it becomes a threat to national security of that said country. At least that's what they'll propagate. At least that's what they'll say. So, like I said, I posted about this on June the 25th because I became privy to this at that point. It was very interesting to me that such a directive existed. I wondered if such a directive existed in the United States of America, but that's something that we'll have to discuss on a later date if any information comes forward. Okay, people, so today's reaction will be to a video titled The Horrors of Plum Island: Hybrids, Human Experiments, and Weaponized Killer Insects. This is brought to you by the Y Files. You can go to the YouTube platform, you can type in the Y Files, and you can go subscribe to this channel. It's a lot of information here. You can decipher for yourself whether it's good information, whether it's bad information, or indifferent. Right now, we're going to watch some of this video. We're going to react to it, and it's going to bring me into my next segment, which is a piece of information that I'm going to share with you guys.
In July 2008, the carcass of an animal washed up on the beach at Montauk Point, Long Island. Local beachcombers are used to seeing dead animals: seagulls, fish, crabs, even the occasional whale. But they had never seen anything like this. Animal experts were brought in to identify it. They were stumped. It looked like part dog, part reptile, and part rodent with the beak of a bird.
Honestly, I don't know what that is. I don't know what it is that I'm looking at. It looks like various different things, but if this is a real image, which I absolutely don't know if this is a real image, but this has been reported, this has been documented, so it's safe to assume that it's real. Let's continue.
This animal, whatever it was, became known as the Montauk Monster. But where did the monster come from? There could be only one answer: Plum Island. Plum Island is just a few miles from where the monster was found. Locals heard rumors that this was a top secret government facility that created bioweapons, engineered animal hybrids, and maybe even experimented on people. Sounds like.
Now let's stop there. An experimental lab, a government experimental lab, biological weapons, experimenting on animals, and possibly experimenting on humans.
Like a wild theory. But then another animal washed up on the beach. Again, it couldn't be identified. And then another animal, and then two more. In 2010, the rumors about Plum Island seemed to be true when something else was found on the beach. This time it wasn't a strange animal, it was a body. A human body. Well, almost human. Less than 2 miles off the coast of Long Island and about 85 miles from New York City is a small island owned by the US government and unidentified on most maps. It's only accessible by ferry or by helicopter, but don't try visiting. Even if you have top secret clearance, access to Plum Island is invitation only. Boats that wander too close are quickly chased away by armed military personnel. Officially, the island is home to the Plum Island Animal Disease Center, a federal research facility that studies livestock-related diseases, specifically.
So officially it's home to the Animal Disease Control Center. That's the documented official home of what Plum Island supposedly is.
Foot and mouth disease, and African swine fever. These are highly contagious diseases that affect cows, pigs, sheep, and goats. The Plum Island Animal Disease Center is the only lab in the U.S. authorized to work with live FMD samples. If these samples escape the island, it could devastate the country's food supply in a matter of weeks. Foot and mouth is so contagious that if a single case is found in imported meat, all meat imports from that country are instantly banned. In 2001, the UK had an outbreak of foot and mouth disease that resulted in a loss of almost $10 billion and the slaughter of more than 6 million animals, whether they were infected.
So now you can just imagine if one of these infectious diseases was to hypothetically get out of the lab by some miraculous or mysterious reason, it not only would affect this whole country, it might even affect parts of the world. So it wouldn't just affect this country. We're talking about diseases and pathogens that human beings probably haven't come in contact with. We probably have never come in contact with some of these diseases and pathogens that they have at this island.
Or not. The center also studies African and classical swine fevers as well as avian flu. Now, there's no question that since the 1950s, Plum Island has studied diseases that affect livestock. But Plum Island's true history is much darker. For years, stories circulated that Plum Island was conducting genetic experiments on animals and possibly on people. So when the bodies of strange animals began washing up on beaches around the Long Island Sound, it could mean only one thing. The rumors about Plum Island were true. The Manhattan Monster was found along the East River. Then another creature washed up. And this one kind of looked like a pig, but you don't see a lot of those running around New York City. Besides, pigs have 4 toes on each foot that ends in a hoof. The Manhattan Monster's feet had 5 toes that ended in what looked like claws.
Oh, did it have the body of a crab and the head of a cat?
No, it had
That
a...
would be a crab cat.
I know, but
See the crab cat?
some thought it could be a huge rat. Now, I'm from New York, and I've seen some huge rats.
Especially under the F train at West 4th Street, huh?
Yeah, there are some particularly huge rats in New York City.
They get big down there, but not this big. Plus, rats have 4 toes on their back feet. Again, this thing had 5. Then another unrecognizable animal appeared. Then another, and another. Plum Island is supposed to be a medical research facility, originally under the purview of the Department of Agriculture. But Plum Island is actually part of Homeland Security. Why? In 2008, an Al Qaeda operative.
So now that's a question that we all have to ask ourselves. Why is it part of Homeland Security? Why would something that would be used for animal disease control be a part of Homeland Security? What is the connection? You know, that leads me to believe the title when it says weaponize. What are you weaponizing? That's the question.
Maiva Siddiqui was captured. She was in possession of handwritten notes with possible sites for a mass casualty attack in the United States. One of the sites listed was Plum Island. Again, why? Well, Plum Island research wasn't always about curing diseases. When it opened, Plum Island was about creating them. In 1952, Plum Island was used to...
So now understand that and understand what he just said. This center, this facility was never created to control diseases. It was never created to stop diseases. No, it was very well created to create diseases, to create new diseases, to experiment, to test diseases and create new ones out of existing diseases, worse diseases, more harmful diseases.
research anti-animal biological warfare. Specifically, it focused on weaponizing foot and mouth disease against enemy livestock to disrupt their food supply. But there's evidence that the bioweapons developed on Plum Island...
So you wanted to weaponize food and mouth disease so you could infect your enemy's livestock. And once again, I've been talking to you guys for so long about war tactics, tactics that are used rather than you and your enemy just meeting up and fighting to the death or to the end or to the surrender or whatever may have you, rather than that scenario playing out. No, you have done diabolical things to harm innocent civilians as to create pressure upon governments around the world. You have done these things, and these things you have not just done to military personnel. You see, it would be one thing if you can say, or if it was an absolute fact that these things are being created for military personnel, military usage, and they would never, ever be used on a population of innocent civilians. But when you look at these conflicts around the world, it is a direct contradiction. You see these weapons of mass destruction, you see these weapons of um biological makeup, all types of weapons being used, and they're being used on innocent civilians.
weren't only targeting animals, but targeting humans. In January 2010, a human body was found on Plum Island by a local security guard. It was described as a 6 foot tall black male with no obvious signs of trauma. But there were a few strange details about this man.
A 6 foot tall black male. You know, as an African American, I find that, it's it's not only appalling, it's very disturbing. You know, the body of this individual could have been in any nationality, but to know that it was my very own nationality, you know, it it bring it I guess it makes me nervous in a sense. You know, I don't want to say scared or fearful, but I guess it makes me kind of nervous in a certain sense to know that this individual that was found was my very same nationality.
One is that his fingers were described as abnormally large. Some news agencies reported that his hands seemed mutated. But the scariest detail of all, his skull had 5 holes drilled into it, indicating invasive brain surgery or experimentation. And that's where Plum Island's dark history becomes even darker. Because when the United States wanted to create one of the deadliest germ labs on Earth, it brought in elite personnel to build it. To build Plum Island, the US brought in bioweapon scientists with experience in human experimentation. To build Plum Island, the US brought in the Nazis.
Now, I had to stop it right there. You know, on the Street Icon podcast, Conspiracy Theory series, something like that, something that's so appalling. So you mean to tell me, which I've already known this, if many of you have studied your history, then you should be privy to this. But the United States of America very well used Nazi scientists. And they used Nazi scientists in such a way, and the things that they created can very well end all of humanity as we know it today. And as a human being, as someone that feels directly connected to the human race, as I said to you before, it really doesn't matter where conflict lies on planet Earth. It all affects me in a certain type of way. When I see people going through hardships, when I see children going through hardship, it bothers me, and it doesn't really matter what nationality, race, creed, or color they are. So for me to know as an American citizen that there was a time in my country where my government sought to use the enemy to create the very same things, to expound upon the very same things that the enemy was using amongst a certain people. If you don't find that appalling, I don't know where you are in your mind. I don't know where you are as a person. I don't know where you are with your moral compass. I just don't know where you are as a human being.
Reims Island, Germany is home to the oldest virological institution in the world. Reims was founded in 1910 to research foot and mouth disease, but during World War II, it became ground zero for Hitler's biowarfare program. Reims was run by scientist Erich Traub, who reported directly to Heinrich Himmler, who reported directly to Hitler. Traub experimented with unique forms of biological warfare. He specialized in biting and stinging insects. He discovered that if you infect beetles and ticks with a deadly disease, you can drop them on enemy troops and their food supplies. You can
Now that is very diabolical right there. So, you know, I always knew about these secret programs. You've always heard about it. You heard whispers about it, but you never knew if they actually existed or not. But to know that these things are actually real, I guess it like I said, it brings a certain a certain nervousness, a certain awareness, a certain alertness, a certain interest. And that's the reason why I started this podcast, because all of these things are not just interesting to me, but they're very intriguing. They make me want to know, they make me want to be informed.
Can devastate an entire army without firing a single shot. Ticks were considered an ideal weapon for biological warfare. They're small, making them hard to detect. They're resilient, making them hard to kill. And they feed on human blood, making them motivated to spread disease.
The tick is the perfect germ vector, which is why it has long been fancied as a germ weapon by early biowarriors, from Nazi Germany and the Empire of Japan to the Soviet Union and the United States.
After the war, there was no Nazi Germany. There was no Empire of Japan. But the Soviet Union and the United States were still very interested in using poison ticks in warfare, except now they would be used on each other. So now the two allies became enemies, and competition for German technology was fierce. The United States launched Operation Paperclip, a secret program that recruited German scientists, engineers, and technicians. The US gave German scientists a choice: work for us and your war crimes are forgiven. Not a difficult decision for most.
Work for us and your war crimes are forgiven. And I believe that the United States went above and beyond just forgiving these individuals' war crimes. You see, these are the individuals that did the most diabolical, wicked, underhanded, disgusting, foul, vile things to human beings. These are the individuals that they took and brought to America. These are the individuals that did the experimentations on human beings. Not just human beings, but animals together with human beings. These are the individuals that the United States of America took in, gave a home to, a new home, gave money, financial stability, homes, vehicles. Some of these individuals rose up in our society to be very prominent, successful individuals. So imagine how I feel when I hear the disdain that the Jewish community has for so many different races and other cultures as it relates to what they deem as anti-Semitic. But yet, the relationship with the United States of America seems to be, it seems to be so unconditional. And I find that astoundingly hard to believe. After you peel back the layers of history.
Even if German scientists refused to work for the US, they could still find themselves swept up in Operation Osoaviakim. This was the Soviet counterpart to Operation Paperclip, but where the US gave scientists a choice, the Soviets took them by force. Eric Traub was one of the scientists forced to work for the Soviets from his lab on Reams Island. But in 1948, British intelligence got him out and brought him to the States. Soon, he was working at Fort Detrick, the Army's biological warfare headquarters. And based on the design of Traub's Island in Germany, the United States built their own lab off the coast of New York. So the Plum Island Animal Disease Laboratory opened its doors in 1954.
And there you have it, people. So that's the story. Well, a brief part of the story of the horrors of Plum Island. So make no mistake about it, people. This was absolutely a real thing. I posted on the X platform yesterday, July 8th. Operation Paperclip was a secret United States intelligence program in which more than 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians were taken from former Nazi Germany to the U.S. for government employment after the end of World War II in Europe. between 1945 and 1959. Some were former members and leaders of the Nazi Party. Now, understand what that means. Some were former members and leaders of the Nazi Party leaders. You know, I sat back when I heard that part right there. Some were former members and leaders. Mhm. I thought to myself, is there a slight possibility that the United States of America brought Hitler to America? I mean, why is it so far fetched to believe? Why is it so far fetched to believe that they brought all of these scientists, engineers, and technicians, but Hitler, Hitler was he wasn't a person of interest. He wasn't someone that you would have wanted to study the mind of. Why is it so plausible for you to have wanted to use these people, but not want to use Hitler, who was in control of all of these people? Why is that not plausible? You see, my mind won't allow me to just dismiss that thought. It won't allow me to just dismiss that because you've proven yourself to be so diabolical in your nature. You've proven yourself to be so foul in your conduct that there's nothing that is above reproach for you. There's nothing above it. What I actually mean is that there's nothing that you won't do. You've already proven that. And so if you will work with the greatest enemy, this is what a Jewish person would say, right? The Nazis were the greatest enemies to humanity, to all of humanity. This is what would be the argument, right? So how is it possible that it is okay for a country to work with said individuals for whatever gain, whatever production, whatever new technological advancement? How is it okay? There are many people who would say, who would contest to the fact that these individuals should not have even been living, let alone given a new country to go to, employment, financial stability, schooling, homes, access to all of the amenities that are available in the United States of America after you just left a place where you've created so much death and destruction. How is it okay? So these are the questions that plague my mind, and I'm pretty sure that some of you are privy to these things, and I'm pretty sure that these questions plague your mind as well. I wanted to show you guys this post because it's a piggyback, so to say, off the last segment that I ran where we made a reaction to a video of the horrors of Plum Island. Operation Paperclip was actually a real thing, and Plum Island was one of the creations of Operation Paperclip. If you haven't done so already, follow Street Icon on all social media platforms. That's at Street Icon 8080 on the YouTube platform. That's at Street Icon 8080 on the YouTube platform, and Street Icon 1 on all other social media platforms. Drop a comment in the comment section and let me know how you feel about the stories that I brought to you today. Let me know exactly and specifically how you feel. If you have any questions, drop a comment in the comment section. And always remember, stay vigilant, stay safe. Peace.